Hi, I'm Dave from Rampant Wolf Games here with
Chris from Deus Ex Machina.
And today we're going to be talking about the top 5 Kickstarter failures that we wish had succeeded.
This was a tricky one.
It was, because I don't really have many that have failed.
That was the interesting thing, because here's the important thing. What constitutes a failure?
For me, I went with did not fund and did not relaunch.
That would be one. Now, unfortunately for that one, there were very few.
Yes.
For me, there's ones that didn't fund.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. And ones that did fund but delivered a subpar product.
Or didn't deliver the product at all.
Ah.
So you got 3 variations.
Oh.
Didn't fund, did fund but didn't deliver,
Mm-hmm.
did fund, delivered, but was crap.
Mm-hmm.
And also we'll throw down failed, relaunched, didn't deliver.
Yep.
And here should be noted that I made a point to create 5 that were very unique. So I am not beating a dead horse. I have 5 very unique stories.
Okay.
So get your marshmallows, folks. I assume that you just have, because unfortunately you backed up more games than me. You probably have more failures. I am thankfully, knocking on wood, that I have not backed a game that just failed. That being said, I got a few that are a little late. Looking at you, Planet Apocalypse. Launches another Kickstarter. It's at 3 pending, and Planet Apocalypse is 5 months late. Shame.
All right.
Number 5. Here he is. He always starts with rock, but no. Rat. All right.
Number 5 for me. Pictures here now. No, she can't.
No, I'll put pictures.
Pictures there.
No, just not this picture, or this picture, or this picture. Those pictures have nothing to do with it.
No.
Your picture is
Iron Wars. So this was...
I'm not going to know any of the titles you mentioned, by the way.
No, probably not. No, most people won't know this one. But basically think Battletech. And it was interesting to see another entry into
It's called what?
Iron Wars.
Iron Wars. Not like Iron Sky, because that's an awesome campy little video.
Yeah, no, Iron Wars. And it was kind of nice to see another entry into the mech-based combat that there's, is so overdone these days. It was nice to see a new take on it. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, they didn't fund, so not much.
What was the goal, you know?
No, not off the top of my head, but I'm sure I can look it up in about... It was a goal of 44,000. They only got 25,000. And, yeah. And only 186 backers. Yeah. For whatever reason, people just weren't digging it, which is unfortunate. Alrighty, so that was my number 5, Iron Wars.
Iron Wars. That's going to be a tricky one for me to pull a video from. So, mine is once again, this is everything. I think what we can take away from this list, I think if you're running that Kickstarter, really look at why these titles are listed. At least for me, yours might, because I can't, yours might, I don't know, I'm nearsighted, so I literally am staring at your screen, and I know exactly which one of them is, because I know how the size of the word, and because you and I both have it on our list. But mine's Richard Garfield's Carnival of Monsters. Richard Garfield, relatively well-known name. Mm-hmm. Carnival of Monsters was a Kickstarter that was run. Now, nobody runs Kickstarter campaigns like this anymore, although there's been rumors that Kickstarter is going to start cracking down on low goals. Carnival of Monsters, guess what the goal was at?
$5.
No, but weird, but because he would have succeeded. No, this is a failed Kickstarter, like you didn't fund. This is the only one I have on my list that did not fund. All the others funded, and then there were problems. This is the only one that didn't fund. 222,000 euros.
Wow.
That's an exceptionally high number.
Oh yeah, because that's almost $500,000.
Yeah, like that is you're basically
$500,000 US.
It's basically $500,000.
Yeah.
Right. That is a lot. That's a lot of scratch. Right. I mean,
wow.
A lot of other games. They're smart. They don't go that direction. They'll put a low goal. Mm-hmm. They'll hit it. They use stretch goals to unlock all the other things. Obviously, it can be a little bit of an unethical practice because they can say, look, we need to have this kind of money. But if we advertise it correctly, we'll get that type of money. Like my last campaign, I needed to get 50,000. I set it at 15. I guess they'll make it work for 15. I wanted it at 50 because that's where I felt it was at. But it was much easier to get to 50 once people knew that they were getting a product. When you hit it at 222,000, it's a grind to get it going. Unless you can guarantee get that $500,000. Yeah. They didn't. They got 23%.
Ouch.
Right? Now, regardless of whether or not they played with the campaign or relaunched it, it costs money to relaunch. They lost money. I think this campaign, they could have gotten $500,000 if they had launched that game properly. So that's an example of what not to do. Don't go, we absolutely need 222,000. No, you keep that goal low. I was trying to explain that to somebody who was just like, I need $200,000. Okay, it's like, so I set my goal at 200,000. Like, so you set it at 50. It's like, no, I can't do that. I'll set it for 150. Like, no, you'll set it at 50. Like, he refused to listen. He's like, I cannot make this work at 50. I'm like, you'll never get it at 150. You get 50 and you start promoting the hell out of it, and so you'll get to 100, 150. I'll get to 100 and you'll get another 50 in the pledge manager. Right? You can get to 200, but you'll never get to 200 if you set it at 200. So that's my number 5, Richard Garfield's Carnival of Monsters. 4.
Number 4. You don't have your audio recording.
Holy shit. Number 4. Magical audio increase. Fidelity. Listen to the power of my voice.
And moving on to
anyway, so number 4.
Number 4, Tinderbox Tales, the re-release. Now, this one, I tried to get in on it because a friend of mine told me about it. He had got it. Tinderbox Tales. Think Flashpoint, but medieval.
Oh my god, I have heard of this. I have heard of this. I thought this was...
Yes.
I thought this got released.
It did.
Uh-oh.
But the re-release didn't, and that was because they hadn't finished delivering
the previous.
And so they were using this Kickstarter to pay, stealing from Peter to pay Paul.
So not like Medora at all.
No, actually, Medora's got delivered. They just didn't deliver pre-orders.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was... and the reason they didn't deliver pre-orders, just to cover that one, is that they wanted to wrap the pre-orders into this campaign so they could make it all in one print run, which makes sense because they're not going to retail.
Oh, that's unethical. Yeah, I don't know. That's really...
Tinderbox Tales. Basically, the other thing, too, is that it wasn't even the same game. They put 2 games in the same Kickstarter. So the game was another thing that had nothing to do with the original Tinderbox Tales, but you could also get a second edition Tinderbox Tale, which in the campaign as an add-on, which had all the fixes that were supposed to be done to the first edition that first edition backers still hadn't received yet. Yeah, they canceled that. Either that or Kickstarter shut them down. I don't know which one it was, but it did not go over well.
Did they end up delivering the first batch?
No, not yet.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, and some people are getting some stuff's broken. Yeah, it's good times. So that was my number 4, Tinderbox Tales.
My number 4 is another one that was a Kickstarter that succeeded. And it delivered. And when I say killer failures we wish had succeeded, I wished it had succeeded in being a good game. Because there are certain IPs that you really wish, you're like, oh my god, it's like I can't wait. They're doing a game based on this IP? Mm-hmm. Oh, hold me back. I can't wait because that could be really fun. Like we have Big Trouble Little China. Mm-hmm. Like, aren't we happy that such a classic cult got a really cool game? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, when are they going to do a Buckaroo Banzai? Like, that would be awesome. A Buckaroo Banzai board game. I would murder for that game. Not really. So then when the company decided that they were putting out a game based on The Princess Bride, that would be really cool. Mm-hmm. But The Princess Bride Prepare to Die is one of the lowest rated games on Board Game Geek. I think it's at 2.4. Ooh. It is incredibly low rated. It's bad. Mm-hmm. It's really bad. I mean, I don't mind the fact that it's a small game. Like, they took the IP and they made a goofy little game out of it. It's like, okay, I hope someone else grabs it and does something better with it. But it was lazy. Mm-hmm. It was badly written, And it was an awful game. They had all the AIP, they made money on Kickstarter, and then they just said, well, no, you're paying it for the collector. It's like people who buy, Stranger Things Monopoly. Like, you're not really playing Monopoly. You just want the Stranger Things Monopoly. It's like, this is basically like they had the IP, and then they're like, oh, good, we'll hire some guy to make a game out of it. And that's it. That's all they did. It was a cash grab. It was simplistic. It was stupid. That's The Princess Bride. Prepare to Die, my number 4 pick.
All right, going into number 3. This one, I really wished it had succeeded because it was a re-release of a game that you can't get anymore. Mm-hmm. It's supposedly supposed to be a good Space 4X game, and that is Exodus Chronicles. Ooh. So this is Exodus, Proxima Centauri, and all of them. It was supposed to be a collector's edition, and I was excited. I was like, I've been trying to get this game for years. I'm excited, and then they canceled this project, literally stating, we thought there was a demand for this, but apparently there isn't, so they canceled it. Yeah. And I was sad because I really am trying to find that game.
Yeah.
And you can't find it anymore. It's not in print. They're not doing another print run. So that even there, the company's not going to make any more of the game because, if the Kickstarter failed that badly.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, Now, it's possible people wanted them to do something more with it than just reprint it and make it with, a little bit different artwork, but I don't know. Yeah. A lot of these small publishers just can't afford to keep doing print runs if they're not selling.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that was my number 3, Exodus Chronicles.
My number 3 is a kind of a strange choice because they haven't given up yet. So the game is called MoumeQuest. Now, MoumeQuest is based on a novel series that quite literally no one's heard of. I think it's a very obscure Irish or Scottish fantasy series that is only really recognizable. It's like it would be recognizable if it got released as a video game and got mass produced, but imagine The Witcher without The Witcher games. No one would know or care. Like, wouldn't have been successful. Same thing with Night Watch or the Metro series. They're popular in their own native countries until someone makes a video game out of it. Yep. MoumeQuest does not have that luxury. It's just a board game. The initial Kickstarter campaign was asking for a pretty decent amount, like 40,000 or so. Didn't succeed. Mm-hmm. So they had to, and they paid money. They were paying money, resources left and right. And it became very clear that they weren't going to succeed. So they had to retool, rebuild, relaunch, and then they barely made their goal. Which means they're really kind of suffering.
Yep.
The game is overdue. They are still in communication, but I know things are tight on their end. They have to be tight on their end because of the problems they went through. Because every time that campaign launches, although you have the potential of making more money than you would have before, it doesn't change the fact that you are spending resources and money in order to get that first campaign launched. When it fails, you have to retool and hopefully it works. And when it launches the second time, you really hope it really works. And when it just makes it, things are going to be tight.
And that's where almost as a designer, a new designer myself, if I had the game that I'm working on was just about to barely make it, I would cancel it.
Yeah.
Because if it's not going to go past just barely making, most likely I'm going to end up losing my shirt.
Yeah, that's one of those things. That's the risk of Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And I know Kickstarter's trying to lock down on people going, well, regardless of whether or not I make my campaign or not, I'm not at the dollar value I want. And Kickstarter's like, well, you have to set that dollar value. I'm like, well, that's what anyone does. But yeah, that's my number 3. I still am relatively... There's actually 2 games. And I'm not... Planet Apocalypse will deliver. It'll just be late. But MoumeQuest and Pandorum, which are 2 games that I backed that are getting worryingly delayed. They're still posting, but I'm concerned. But they haven't given up, so I'm going to hold faith that they'll finally deliver. So that's number 3, MoumeQuest.
All right. My number 2 is Robotech. And for me, this is a game that we all wanted. It was, mech combat, also in space, and ships, and it was everything we wanted because it was what we grew up with as a kid watching the anime. It was going to be awesome. Yep. And it just didn't. And actually, if you're curious, they actually Transformers ripped off the design of the fighters for Firestorm. So
Jetfire. Jetfire.
Yeah. No, it was Firestorm.
Jetfire. Trust me. This is something where there are a few things I know really well.
Yeah, the red and white jet.
The red and white jet, Jetfire.
Oh, okay.
There's certain things I know really well. The American space program and Transformers. These are the two things I will declare, and specifically Robotech. There's a very, very, there's two videos done by these two guys. They're unrelated. They both dealt with the history of the Robotech franchise. One is on, I think, Toy Trade. It's a YouTube channel that focuses on the franchise because of toys, because of their relationship with Matchbox and a few others. And then there's another one that is more centered on the history of the animated. They're both fantastic programs. They both have installments that were just updated. Like, they've been doing up videos on this series for about a year and a half. Yeah. The last ones for both these were posted this year, so I think the story isn't over yet. One guy is. The Toy Trade one, I think, is done. The other guy still has, I think, more to say. And they are I knew most of the story. It's incredibly nostalgic to go through and see the history. But that IP is fucked. I cannot tell you how messed up that IP is. Like, you're talking about the fact that they ripped off. No one ripped off anything. You think they do, but no. There is just a cluster of just IP ownership. Who owns what and when? You've got Revell doing models because they bought the rights, and they had created a line called Robotech, and they created a fictional universe for this. And then at the exact same time, Hasbro had bought the rights to those exact same properties. So here's the crazy thing. Hasbro has the exclusive rights to the Veritech / Valkyrie because it could produce as Jetfire. They have rights to that design. They're the only ones that can sell that Transforming Fighter. They don't own the design. They just own the right to sell it, which means someone else can can show a Veritech or a Valkyrie on the screen by owning the design, but they can't sell toys based on that design because that toy right is owned by Hasbro, right? And then, of course, Battletech moves in, and Battletech is also using that design. So Hasbro started suing people left and right. Harmony Gold countersuing. Battletech just said, we're not getting involved in this mess. Threw the chips and said, we'll redesign all of ours for second edition. You'll never see these things in there again. And they didn't. But the first edition Battletech was filled of all Robotech designs. Because the company, Tokito, I'm going to get that wrong. They needed money. They were sending things left and right because once again in Japan, you have the company who made it, who owns the IP. Then you have another company that was wanting to do original animation, and then you have the guy at the creator, and they all have their stake, which is the reason why copyright in Japan is such a mess. And there are official sequels to Macross and unofficial sequels to Macross because they're made by different people who own different pieces of the franchise. It's almost like, James Bond. James Bond owned by the Broccolis. That's basically owned it, except for Thunderball. Thunderball was co-owned by another guy. So he went and he made Never Say Never Again with Sean Connery through Warner Brothers. It's a Bond film, but it's not considered canon, even though it's a direct remake of Thunderball. So there are two identical films with Sean Connery about Thunderball. One's called Never Thunderball, which is part of the canon, and the other one's Never Say Never Again because the copyright's completely messed up. Robotech is not even close to being as simplistic as that. It is a disaster of a mess. Compounded by the fact that Harmony Gold has had such an ironclad gauntlet grip on the IP. And that's the reason why, up until recently, there was nothing being done with the franchise because Harmony Gold wouldn't let anyone play with their toys. So yeah. You were saying?
You're number 2.
My number 2 is Hollywood.
Says he's not going to go on a rant. Says the video is too long. And what does he do? Does on a rant.
My number 2 is Hollywood Death Race. I'm sorry to bring up memories, man. So this is an example of a title that funds.
I forgot about that one.
This is an example of a title that funds, which happens, and then they cancel the project. Where the creator comes out and says, you know, it didn't work. Name a title. The Monster That Ain't St. Louis, right? Throw a Rock. There are games out there. Oh, I forgot about that title. I gotta put that on there. That's actually a bigger one. The Monster That Ain't St. Louis is actually almost a better example. I use Hollywood Death Race because it's a recent example. Because quite literally, he canceled his project like this month. Well, it's July. Was it June?
Yes.
Okay, so he canceled it in June. It's July at the time of this recording. So it just happened. He had his money. I don't believe it for a second that it's the tariffs that's causing it. I think that he was so close to the wire, which means he had an economy problem. He didn't make enough. The IP, like he's probably skirting IP really close.
Yes.
Hopefully that there's a Hail Mary pass to resurrect it. But unfortunately, if you paid into that Kickstarter, accept the fact that your money's gone.
Yeah.
He'll refund part of it. I will imagine most people will never get their money back.
No.
And I'm sorry, because I looked at that campaign and said, no way in hell, and you backed it. I'm sorry.
Yep, I always bet on the losers.
So,
anyways,
number one. Snip, snip, snip. It's Robotech. I just went on a rant, for God's sakes. It's obviously on mine. Well, so let me talk about something that I didn't talk about, which is now going into the history. So, Robotech gets to the 2000s. There are numerous failed attempts to get this franchise resurrected. Really bad, lame attempts. And what annoyed me the most was that they had this huge, rich history that they had established post the cartoon. Mm-hmm. And Harmony Gold in the 2000s said, you know what? The best way to proceed is to retcon and just say the only thing canon are the animated episodes. They did a Star Wars where they tossed out the extended universe. Mm-hmm. But with Robotech, the vast majority of the setting that people knew of was the extended universe because that's the only thing that they had to drink in this desert for 15 years. So they throw out everything. They throw out the Sentinels, Robotech 2, the whole thing. And then they created the Shadow Chronicles. I'll go, yeah, that's fine. As long as they do some sequels, I'm happy. And then it failed. So now we don't even have that. We have one Shadow Chronicles, and we have a comic of Shadow Chronicles, and that's it. And that was in 2008. It's been nearly 12 years, and we still don't have something with Robotech. There are a couple of new comics. Every single one of them wants to take it a new direction, so they're all basically non-canonical, and no one really knows what the hell's going on. But there was one unfaltering beacon, and that was the fact that despite the comics changing hands 13 times, despite the fact that they had these failed projects, you still had Kevin Zambita and Palladium making role-playing games, and they had exclusive license to make role-playing games. And like Harmony Gold, they kept a tight grip on that. And they held it for 20 plus years. And they hadn't produced something in a bit. They had a couple new titles that came out the 2000s. And then they finally decided to release their first big title. Miniature-based combat game in Robotech. Makes 1.2 million, or just over $1 million. More than enough to do well. Then it completely collapses. Zambita does one of the most foolish things out there. He pens an open letter which insinuates that the blame falls on the backers. Right? Lays them by trying to insinuate that they are responsible for the game's designer apparently attempting suicide. And the community at that point were like, how dare you? How dare you? This is not on us. This was on you. Like, why didn't you fully run this? The ultimate cost was that apparently less than 200 complete boxes were ever made. And they were sent out to business people, very few to backers, in order to try to get the money required. They didn't get enough, and the project collapsed. Not only did that collapse, but for the first time ever, Palladium lost the Robotech license. because they had lost their license. Chronicles says, well, you dumb screwed up, boy. You don't get to play with our toys anymore. And now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 Robotech games in a span of just 12 or 13 months.
And they all suck.
Well, we'll hopefully get into that. I'm hoping to get into some Robotech games. And it's going to be so difficult for me to hate them.
Yeah.
Have you actually played them?
No, but there's not much of a game there when it's $23.
No, there's a $100 Robotech game.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
There's one that has a cardboard SDF one that's as big.
I haven't seen that one.
I need that in my life. But yeah, Robotech, like when you look up board game Kickstarters that failed on Google, it is the first choice for the next 6 options. And when you talk about board game Kickstarters that failed on YouTube, some kind of top 10 list, it's number 1.
Yep.
And it's number 1 for this list as well because it is one of the most dramatic failures.
Yep.
And that is Robotech RPG Tactics, my number 1 pick. I thought it was your number 1.
All right, my number 1
I really don't know what your number 1 is now.
is Robotech RPG Tactics.
Then what was...
Now, you might be asking, but that was number 2. But here's the thing. It was such a horrible failure and so painful
That's what you
that
meant.
it felt it bared mentioning twice.
That's what you meant by quoting Red Dwarf.
Am I the only sane one here? Why don't we drop the defensive shields?
A superlative suggestion, sir, with just 2 minor flaws. 1, we don't have any defensive shields. And 2, we don't have any defensive shields. Now, I realize that technically speaking, that's only 1 flaw, but I thought it was such a big one, it was worth mentioning twice.
Good point, well made.
I actually know the line. I know the episode. I know the line, and I know the episode. It's the first episode, I think, of the 3rd season.
I think
it was
so.
a running joke.
Yep.
And then he does it again. Will's like, that's a great idea, sir, with 2 minor drawbacks. And I'm like, okay, forget it.
So that's my
Wow.
number 1 Robotech RPG Tactics, bared mentioning twice.
3 times. 3 times a Mayday. Yeah, so anyway, yeah. Well, I guess when we compile our top 5 quick take version of this,
It's going to be a
no.
times.
It's definitely number 1. I think we've guaranteed it's number 1. Would you put Hollywood Death Race on your list now that you remember
Yeah.
it? I definitely think the Carnival of Monsters is a good example.
Exodus Chronicles.
That was definitely a good one as well. But yeah, my number 5, Richard Garfield, Carnival of Monsters. Number 4, Princess Bride, Prepare to Die. I wish it did. MoumeQuest is number 3. Ooh, please deliver. Number 2, Hollywood Death Race. And number 1, Robotech RPG Tactics. I'm almost happy it failed because that opened the floodgates. Now we're getting games from a whole bunch of people, which is what we should have had for 10 years.
So my number 5, Iron Wars. Number 4, Tinderbox Tales, the relaunch. Number 3, Exodus Chronicles. Why? Number 2, Robotech RPG Tactics. And number 1, Robotech RPG Tactics. So, once again, I've been Dave from Mindful Games.
And I have been Chris with Deus Ex Machina.
And remember, the rules are just a suggestion. Play the game how you want to play it.
And Kickstarter just a suggestion, but you still got to deliver your game.
Yep.